Today on Comm Talk, we're talking about Freeform's Cloak and Dagger. Okay, what is happening here?
Where are we?
Glix, give us a situation report.
Currently, we are on the planet Geekery. Be warned, our impossibility drive may cause distortions as we traverse this land. Impending impossibility engaging in 3,
Oh, gosh.
2,
Oh, dear.
1.
Hello, devoted geeks, and welcome to Comm Talk, the podcast extension of Geek Devotions, a show from a couple of devoted geeks who are devoted to letting people know that they are loved. I'm Dallas, and with me, as always, is the beautiful and talented
Celeste. Oh my. That's a lot to live up to.
And you do it perfectly.
I don't know about that. Anyway, don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and then rate and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's greatly appreciated.
Yes, it is. So, couple of quick announcements before we get into today's podcast and discussion. As always, we appreciate you guys being part of things. If you missed it, Friday was pretty special for us,
Yes.
Celeste. What happened Friday?
Friday, we launched Season 3. We have officially finished 2 years of Geek Devotions, and we are now starting in on our 3rd.
We're so excited about it. And it was a really good time. We had some really cool people in the chat.
Yes.
We had some fun. We announced our new logo.
Yes.
We did a couple other things. We've revamped the entire website and everything.
Yep.
With our new designs.
We now have a Patreon.
Yes, and that's the interesting aspect of it. Celeste, can you tell our listeners what a Patreon is?
Patreon is a way for you to support your content creators that you love. You can donate money and it helps them create better content or create more content, depending upon the situation. For us, it's create better content.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure further down the line, eventually it'll help us create more content. But right now, it's just we want to do things with excellence, and we want to give you the opportunity to be a part of that as well.
Exactly. So check it out, patreon.com/Geek Devotions. It's where you can find our Patreon. And again, it's a monthly giving thing. We were blown away. We've already got 2 people within less than 10 hours of us setting up our Patreon and announcing it. We have 2 devoted Patreon geeks.
And we are so thankful for them.
We are. And so next week we will be kicking in with the rewards.
Yes.
There are different rewards for different tiers. You get shout outs and different things. You have the opportunity to make decisions here, or what happens here on Comm Talk and Geek Devotions.
Yeah.
Because
it's always good to get extra input, because I'm sure that eventually people will get tired of what we like. So it's always good to get others. And like Dallas said, you can always go to patreon.com and find us, but the link is also on our website, geekdevotions.com.
Right. It's under our About Us page, I think.
Maybe. I'm not sure what we did with that.
Let me double check it real quick.
Dallas is more the nuts and bolts guy behind the things.
I'm more just nuts. All right, so yeah, it's on our About Us page on our website, geekdevotions.com.
That way, if you don't want to rifle through all the Patreons of all your favorite content creators and just want to get to ours,
right? We
have assisted you in that.
There you go. So let's get into the actual topic for today. The thing that we binged watched this, didn't we?
To an extent. Every once in a while we do this. We get I don't think it's actually considered binging, because we only watched 2 and 3 episodes at a time.
Right.
I think you have to watch 4 episodes to be considered actual binging.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, usually when we've been busy with something, we decide to pick a series and just go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've finished the first season of Cloak and Dagger.
Right. So if you're unfamiliar with the series, you can find it on Hulu. That's how we watched it, but did originally air on Freeform. In fact, the final episode of season 1 aired 2 days ago on Thursday, I believe, or was it Friday?
I believe it was Thursday.
That's right. It was Thursday. And so,
because that was when we finished all but the last episode.
Right. Oh, it was a cliffhanger. But the basic premise is this. In New Orleans, there are these 2 teenagers named Tandy Bowen and Tyrone Johnson, and they have entirely different backgrounds and lifestyles that they have lived. And because of an accident that took place on a what they call the Roxxon golf platform, was an oil rig type of situation, but they weren't digging for oil. Something more sinister than that. After an accident, they were imbued with certain powers.
Yeah.
And so this first season was all about them discovering their abilities and kind of working through the tragedies of their past.
And then also learning to work together by the end of it, because they're both very much, I take care of myself, I do my own thing, I don't need anyone else. And you realize that they really do need each other.
Exactly. So let's kind of break down a few things about the show, and then talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and then let's compare it to the comics. And then what we're going to do is at the end of this episode, we're going to recommend to you guys whether or not to watch season 2. Okay? So that's how it's going to work out. So a couple of small things about the show you need to know. Tandy's powers is that she touches people and she sees their biggest hopes.
Yes. She also has the ability to create light daggers.
Yeah. Which are pretty beastly little things.
They cut through steel doors.
Right. Now, Ty's power, who is the cloak individual, he seems to have the ability to, when he touches people, to see their biggest fears. And at the same time, in this first season, teleport from place to place. But he has difficulty controlling it. He actually has to be kind of closed up in darkness to be able to do it. So that's the reason why he was wearing that cloak, was so he can close off and teleport.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so
that makes sense why he can't really control it without the cloak.
Exactly. And so that's kind of their power. So let's tell them what Tandy's backstory, like what is her end goal for this season?
What her initial end goal was?
Yes.
Reveal that Roxxon is shady.
Right.
They blamed, early into the first episode, you realize that something is about to go wrong, and her dad is trying to warn people and tell them what to do to make it not happen. And then you realize that further into the episode that Roxxon is actually blaming her dad because her dad dies, not because of the accident, but because he was so concerned on the phone driving that he got into a car accident.
Right.
With her in the car.
Right.
So he passes away, and then they basically blame everything on him because dead men can't complain, right?
That's right.
So it's more about her clearing her dad's name and wanting to prove that he was not who they were saying he was.
Right. And so we find out later that he worked pretty closely with the team, and he was actually responsible for a lot of the research that was going on here.
Yeah. Him and one other character.
So that then, of course, leaves Ty, or Cloak. And his story's a bit different. You find out in the first episode, when he was young, the same night that Tandy's father and her got into the car accident, that he was trying to show off to his brother and his brother's friends, try to win their approval. And his brother was trying to do right. He was trying to do things the correct way and not be shady. And so when his friends asked him to help him steal a radio from a car, he said no. Well, Ty wanted to show off and feel like he was part of this group. And so he stole it himself. Now, he's like real young in this. He's like maybe 10 years old.
Yeah.
And he breaks into a car and steals it. Goes to his brother, trying to show, hey, look, I did this.
Yeah.
He's like, look, this is wrong. We're not these type of people. Let's return this. Cops show up. They go on the run, and the cops are chasing after them. They end up on a pier. Again, this is the night that everything goes down. And Ty is hiding behind a cargo, and his brother Billy is standing at the edge of the pier. Cops are telling him to put his hands up, all sorts of stuff. An explosion happens.
Yeah.
And the cop just reflex, shoots his brother, and he falls in the water. So Ty runs out to try to save his brother, goes into the water. It was in the water where there's a second explosion, and that's when they are both empowered in some strange way.
They had whatever they were drilling for, because even at the end, you're still not completely sure what it is that they're drilling for. You know it's not oil, but you don't know what it is. So they know, that they have another explosion, and it's the stuff that they were drilling for comes into contact with them with the water.
And something about that combination causes them to have these powers that don't really manifest for many, many years, at least 8 years down the road.
It manifested initially.
In that one moment, but not in its fullness until later.
Not in its fullness until later.
Right. And so that's kind of the summation of the first episode.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff, they grow up. And we're trying not to give you guys too many spoilers in this episode, but there will be some. But Tandy's family is now pretty much wrecked.
Yeah.
Her mom's a pillhead.
Yeah.
And they live in a trailer park. Tandy's living on the street on her own, stealing stuff. And she's a drug addict.
Yeah. I actually don't even think it was just a trailer park, because at one point somebody said something about Katrinaville. I think they were living in the makeshift housing that had been set up for Katrina victims that people moved out of.
That's a possibility. I missed that somehow. And then Ty's family, though, his mom kind of rallied the family together in the loss of their son. The cops, it would appear, covered up the murder and acted like it was an accident. They have no idea who shot his brother. And so the mom and dad kind of rallied, and they're doing pretty well. He's going to a private school there in New Orleans, and they seem to be doing well. Of course, things go south from that point forward, and it gets interesting. So that's kind of the summation of everything in the first episode, and hope you guys have a clear understanding what the context of everything is. Ty's thing for most of the season is trying to figure out who murdered his brother and bring him to justice.
Yeah.
So with all that said, Celeste, what are some things you liked about the series?
I liked, even though in the comics they were not in New Orleans, I liked that they put it in New Orleans, because there's a lot of mysticism and a lot of, and the environment fits for people to believe that this type of thing could happen. Whether it may not be what they were saying as in science. The belief is definitely there. There's a lot of superstition.
Right.
You also had things like the final episode takes place during Mardi Gras, and there are some certain elements that would not have been there had it been anywhere else, because no one really wants to be in New Orleans during Mardi Gras, because it is so many people, it is so crazy, and it lends itself to things happening.
Absolutely. I think some stuff I liked about it was I enjoyed the setting of it being New Orleans. I thought that was pretty neat, just like you thought it was. But I don't know, I enjoyed the progression of the story. You saw some interesting story building of the characters, fleshing them out, trying to understand them. There were times where it was kind of like, okay, why is this character doing this? But I think they wrapped everything up pretty well.
Yeah.
And I appreciated the subtle nods to the original comics here and there. And we're going to get into that here in a little bit. So that was some of the stuff that I enjoyed. If I had to pick one thing that stands out the most that I really enjoyed was some, not all, but some of the social commentary. There were a lot of things that they pointed, like that's been happening in recent history here in not Louisiana, but in the States. It was interesting. And sometimes when shows get political, it gets stupid. Yeah. And they go over the edge. This seemed to take a pretty well balanced look at some of the social issues happening here at the stateside.
It pointed out the issues, but it also pointed out both sides of the issues. The fact that, you may assume it's this one side, but take a look at the other side and things make a little bit more sense.
So that was some stuff I appreciated. Now, what did you not appreciate?
There was one scene that I just could have done completely without. Oh. This is a freeform show, so it's meant for teenagers. Because Freeform is really a teenager channel. Let's just face it. Right. But they do things that tends to be a little bit more promiscuous. And while the show in general was very clean, there were two scenes that got a little bit more promiscuous without one scene in particular showed more skin than I would have been pleased with. The other scene alluded to things.
Right.
And I could have just done without that.
Yeah.
Like, there's ways to get around showing things.
In the first scene, that they didn't necessarily show anything.
Yeah.
And it was pretty quick. And it was a scene between Ty and his girlfriend. And it ended real quickly. Like, it was one of the... It reminded me very much of the way they did things in older films where... You know, the couple walked off into a dark room and, you know, the lights were turned off and the door was shut. You knew what was going on as an adult. Kids didn't necessarily catch it. Bip, bip, done. And so they did that well with the first one. The second one was just, well, it wasn't super explicit. It was pretty explicit. It
was unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
They, I think, were trying to allude to Ty and Tandy having a relationship. But they were using two different characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so up until the point of where you see faces, that's what you think is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it also kind of comes out of the blue.
Way out of the blue. Like, it was unnecessary to the nth degree.
If it had not been so out of the blue, and if this was not something that was marketed to younger people, I think I would have been more okay with it. Because like you said, the first scene was very... old school stuff. I could have done without it, but at the same time, they did it well enough that it didn't bother me until they did that other scene, and then both things bothered me.
Yeah. It was just, it didn't add to the story.
No, not at all.
And I think that's one of the things I disliked, is that those two scenes. Now again, that's just two scenes. They were super brief. I appreciate it. They were very brief.
They were very brief.
This is like one of the Netflix originals. I mean, it was pretty quick. It was mostly pretty tasteful. But just unnecessary.
Yeah. And again, especially the second scene, because it was so unnecessary. It was a misdirection that wasn't needed. It served no purpose for the storyline.
All right. So what else did you not like?
A few of the characters tried to pull off Cajun accents. And it was just bad. Like, New Orleans has its own accent, and I can't do it. I'm from Shreveport. I respect that I cannot do that accent.
Yes.
And they sounded more like they were from the Bronx when they were trying to do it, because it is very similar. But it was... No.
Yeah, some of the characters' accents weren't working at all. And there were times where I think one character was trying to do it and then just gave up halfway through a scene.
Yeah.
And it was kind of jarring at some times. So, I wasn't really a fan of that either. If I had to pick stuff that I didn't like, it would be those things, really.
Yeah.
Is the
small stuff.
Yeah, those two scenes that we talked about a minute ago. And just the accents. It wasn't a deal breaker. The storyline was good. Everything flowed together really well. But that was just kind of weird for me. Another thing that I kind of disliked, which is... kind of goes into our next portion, which is where we're talking about some of the comic book roots, is the odd adjustment of their powers.
Yeah.
And so, before I can mention that, let's talk about the comic book real quick.
Yeah.
And mention some of the background history of it. So if you're unfamiliar with the characters from the comics, they first appeared in Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 64 back in 1982. So these are kind of a long-established characters, but at the same time, kind of in the background.
Yeah.
They haven't had a lot necessarily. They're not your staple Marvel characters everyone hears about.
You have to be really into Marvel to have noticed them.
Mm-hmm. So they were in a couple of episodes or issues of Spider-Man. They got their first ongoing series. It was a 4-part miniseries back in '83.
Mm-hmm.
And issue 4 of that is when we discover their special abilities. Or they're not their special abilities, but their history. Like the actual full-on origin story. And then a year later, they got an 11-part series. It was bi-monthly.
Yeah.
And then they've kind of popped up here and there. They were in, I think, Dark X-Men, I think was what it was called. They were in the actual X-Men comics for a little bit. They've had a couple of spin-offs from like the Spider-Verse. Mm-hmm. They had a small entry in there. And just recently, we just found out, back in June, they had started up again another Cloak and Dagger series, which we have not read. We haven't looked at it. I would be curious to find out whether or not it lines up more with what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Generally, that's what Marvel does, at least as far as, like, some of the details may be different because the cinematic verse is different than the books, and that's a well-established thing, but generally things line up a little bit easier when they do that.
Yeah. Now, it should be stated, this is within the universe, the cinematic universe.
Yes.
There are references to Luke Cage.
Yes. And apparently, even though we have not finished Luke Cage Season 2, there is references to Cloak and Dagger in Season 2.
Right.
Very subtle references.
Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting design of certain things. But the difference between the comics and the series, some of it, again, I think it's because they were trying to make something happen. In the original comic book series, their lives are kind of different.
Yeah.
Ty, his family was seemingly never really well-to-do. He was from the hood. He had a stuttering problem or some sort of speech impediment, and in the comics, Billy was just his best friend. Yeah. It was someone that was always there for him. They were the same age, and similar thing, accidentally got shot. However, the shooting was a matter of they were kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time, and when the cop went to go shoot at Billy because he was running, Ty's trying to stop him and trying to say, hey, stop. He didn't do this. This wasn't his fault. We had nothing to do with this. He couldn't get the words out because of his stuttering. And so then he got shot. On the flip side, Dagger, or Tandy, her story is also kind of different in the fact that in the TV series, when we meet her, she's living on the street. And she is stealing things. She's hustling. Whereas in the comics, she was very well-to-do. She was the one in the private school. Her mom was a model who neglected her, which they kind of play with a little bit in the series. Not the modeling part, but the neglection. Is that the word I'm looking for? Neglect?
Neglect.
Yeah. And her dad had left them completely. And there was a stepdad who kind of wanted to be part of her life. But she ends up trying to run away. And Ty runs away because he's on the run from the cops. And they end up in basically New York. So they're kidnapped and taken to Ellis Island, where they are subjected to some experiments. There's a scientist. He's trying to come up with a new drug that's more addictive than heroin. And everyone he's tested this out on has died. And Tandy and Ty are the first ones not to die. And but at the same time, in the midst of their escape, and they're in the waters trying to get ashore, that is when things go south for them. But at the same time, their powers suddenly take a turn and activate inside their bodies. Something about the water and this drug. So again, those are some pretty major differences between the two, as far as their origin stories on how things happened.
I think, though, that the reason they didn't do that is they already have, because it is connected to the Netflix shows, at the very least. They already have Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, who were tested on and made the way that they are. Something, and that's actually a large portion of season 2 of Jessica Jones, is her trying to figure out who did this and why. So I think that they didn't want to flood their storylines with a bunch of, hey, we were tested on and this happened.
Right.
Now, I'm trying to remember, though, if Roxxon was actually the company in that.
I don't know. We'll have to go back and look at that up. But, so a couple other things are a little different, though. The manifestations of the powers.
Yeah. This
whole touching people and seeing their fears and their hopes, I've yet to see that happen in the comics. I've read several of them already. I've yet to see that manifestation happen.
Yeah,
what I have seen, though, is that Cloak, and you see this at the very end of the season, he can actually eat people into the darkness. He absorbs them. Because what happens is Cloak has this insatiable hunger for what equivalates or what is equivalent of the light of a soul. Mm-hmm. And so absorbing people is the best way to do it, but that's also bad. So he has this kind of this battle. Right. It's almost there's this running stream of drug use and trying to combat drugs and the evils of drugs. And I do appreciate that in the series they do that. Yeah. They reference that because that is a running thing throughout every Cloak and Dagger is that they're out to stop drug pushers and people who are trying to get young people addicted to drugs and stuff like that. And so, but Tandy, her light that she puts out, mm-hmm. it naturally, it's what he needs. That's part of the reason why they work in pairs together is because she has what he needs.
So that he doesn't have to...
Right. And at the same time, it comes out later that she has to use her powers at least once a week or she becomes really sick and feverish and she can't help but expel her abilities.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. Very interesting to see. So... Again, some pretty major differences. I can see why that's a lot of stuff they had to cram into 10 episodes of one series. So I see it. I don't know what they're going to do with the next season, though. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the major differences. What do you think of those?
I can see why they changed it. And just for the record, I did look up, and it is not the same company mm-hmm. as who gave Jessica Jones their powers. Mm-hmm. So that's not, unless later it's revealed that those two companies are connected.
Right.
These are a whole new set of company mm-hmm. doing junk. So I can understand why they changed things because I appreciated some of the changes in the backstory. Mm-hmm. They didn't make Tandy the typical rich girl being neglected, running away. And they didn't make Ty a typical kid from the hood. Mm-hmm. Like, they gave them more depth.
Right.
And I greatly appreciate that because they're not just the simple stereotypical characters. They have more to them than what meets the eye. They are like Transformers.
Absolutely.
Except not really. So I appreciated that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would have been intrigued to see what they would have done with the mm-hmm. original story in cinematic.
Yeah. So there's a lot into this series, obviously. And there's some really cool things you pull out, some really encouraging things you pull out. The fact that they work together, they're not allowing their past necessarily. I think that was one of the running themes that I like the most, is that they each have a past, they each mm-hmm. have a struggle, but they have to make decisions to whether or not they're going to let their past define them mm-hmm. or if they're going to move past it to accomplish a common goal, to do what's best for everybody else. And so I appreciated that kind of running through. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people can learn from and pull from, that we do need to do that. We need to move past our past, so to speak, and accomplish great things.
Yeah. I did find it interesting because in the comics, Tandy is very hopeful, very light, very much a representation of what her powers are. Mm-hmm. And she got there eventually, mm-hmm. but at the beginning you're like, are we sure she's not Cloak? Because she was so negative.
She was.
So watching her go from the progression of so negative to so hopeful was interesting. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, watching Cloak, or Ty, go from the progression of being so hopeful to now he's the negative one. Right. You're sitting here going, oh.
But I think even though he became pretty negative at times, he was pretty hopeful at the end of it. Like, you could see there was a change in him. And of course, his situation, we don't want to give away too much. There was a lot of things that went down for him.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it was interesting. So, Celeste, I guess the question boils down to this. That they have confirmed there will be a season 2 of Cloak and Dagger. Is it worth our time to watch it? Would you recommend also season 1 to those listening?
I would definitely recommend it. I would monitor your kids just because the little kids, just because mm-hmm. of those scenes. Mm-hmm. I don't remember which episodes they were in. Mm-hmm. It was fairly early.
I don't think anybody really under the age of 13
would appreciate it.
Right. And, well, but like, because there is drug use, there is some domestic violence.
Yeah.
There are certain more mature things. I think anybody under the age of 13 really wouldn't be able to handle some of it.
Agreed. So I would not recommend it for your small children. But even your teenagers, as long as you're there watching it with them, it's a good show. It's a good, and it brings up conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, just between you and I, we've had conversations about things that have been brought up in the shows since then, just because that's what we do.
Yeah.
But if it starts a conversation with you and your kids about things that need to be talked about, like, okay, well, she's addicted to drugs. This is not something that's good. You see how this is ruining her life at this moment, and she has to get off the drug. Like, it provides opportunities for discussion about serious topics.
Right, absolutely.
And it's a fun show.
Yeah, it really is. It's a really pretty cool, very fun show. So, I'm kind of the same boat. I'd agree with us, like, recommending this to other people. And we have already, several people. So, is it worth our time to watch season 2 when it comes out? That didn't necessarily leave with a cliffhanger, but at the same time, there is a scene right at the end that you go, things just got much more interesting.
I think that this is going to end up being like all of our other superhero shows, where we sit down and we binge.
Yeah.
Like, we take a few nights. It's like, especially if they keep it short, like 10 episodes. I'm not sure if that's the plan, but if they keep it about that, then it would be worth it to sit down and watch 3 or 4 episodes at a time. Because there is so much going on, I think I would get frustrated by watching one episode at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Again, watching it 2, maybe 3 episodes at a time, if you have like just a day off, binge it real quick. It's a pretty cool show.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's our thoughts. Unless you want to add any last-minute conversational points about this series?
It's a good show. It's not the best in the world, but it's a cute show. It's good.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Comm Talk. This was episode 45. I don't think I mentioned that on the front end of the show. But, hey, do us a favor and check us out on all of our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And obviously, you can check out this show and all the show notes for it at geekdevotions.com. We do ask you guys to have some leniency with us as far as getting the YouTube version of this up.
Yes.
Because, as many of you guys know, our laptop is still in the shop.
Yeah.
And so, and
it's actually on its way back to us. But
it is.
It was in the shop, and it's not made it home yet.
Yeah, so the YouTube version will be up as soon as possible, though. But, check out our stuff. And also, again, if you guys are interested in supporting Geek Devotions in a very real, very tangible way on a monthly basis, check out patreon.com/Geek Devotions. Just so you guys know what we're doing with these things, we have certain goals we're trying to reach. If we can reach $20 a month, we can expand our devotionals and reviews to include things that are up to date and more relevant. More relevant books, more relevant comics, more relevant movies, stuff that's more up to date, such as this Cloak and Dagger episode we just did.
So, except for things like, because books and movies and usually TV shows cost a little bit of money.
Right.
So.
Exactly. If we can get to the point where we have $50 a month coming in to help us out, within 1 year, we will be able to update our audio and video capabilities, which will allow us to do more recordings at events outside of our studio. We will also be able to do special devotional and podcast reviews based off movie recommendations by devoted Patreon geeks once every 3 months. And then if our final goal that we have is $150 a month, if we can reach $150 a month coming in from you amazing devoted Patreon geeks, we will be able to do at least one out-of-state convention a year, such as Dallas Comic Con or others, and we will do a special Google Hangout with devoted Patreon geeks every 2 months, and every 3 months we'll do our $50 reward also. We're grouping all that in, but this $150 one, it's kind of a big deal for us because we want to be able to go and, to quote Celeste's favorite movie, be where the people are.
Oh my gosh.
We want to be able to hang out with geeks and love on them and show them that God cares about them. We're going to GeekCon here in just a few weeks.
Yes.
And we're going to be there. We're going to be on the floor. We're going to be walking around. We're going to be talking to people and ministering to people and loving on people and showing them there is hope. And so that $150 goal a year, or a month rather, that pays for us to be able to go out of state and do that on a grander scale and almost as a missions trip type of a thing. Yeah. So if you guys are willing to support us, we'll be happy to have you. So
we will let you do that.
Well, guys, that's pretty much all we have for you guys. Again, check out all of our stuff. Check out our Patreon. And be praying for us, guys, because God's opening some really cool doors for us right now.
Giving us some good vision.
Yes, He is.
Well, don't forget to rate, leave a review, and comment on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as our website, geekdevotions.com. And until next week, stay devoted.
Peace and love.